welcome to the Gavel. I am Terry Ikumi. Federal lawmakers have been reacting to allegations by the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Mr. Godswill, accusing them of hijacking projects of the Niger Delta Development Commission. Now, in a statement, the Chairman Senate Committee on NDDC, Senator Peter Nwoboshi, who was named in the said publication of being awarded 53 NDDC contracts, denied the allegation and challenged Mr. Akpabio to send the list to anti-graft and other security agencies if he can substantiate the allegation. He says this unsubstantiated allegation is in line with Mr. Akpabio's agenda to continuously blackmail him so as to keep diverting public attention away from the serious mismanagement of the NDDC by the Interim Management Committee under his supervision and under the guise of a phantom forensic audit that has no operating timeline. Now, another lawmaker, Senator James Manager, has also denied the allegation against him, maintaining that he does not know of any company owned by him that has ever bidded for government contracts. Senator Manager is also challenging the minister to provide detailed description of the said contracts, names of companies, and the beneficiaries of the payments. Away from that now, it's the first week of the annual recess of the National Assembly. And while federal lawmakers may be on holiday, some legislative work was still done within the week under review. Let's begin with a retreat held by the House of Representatives to prepare members for the post-COVID era. The House also seized the opportunity to present its revised legislative agenda due to COVID-19. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, who is also the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, was in attendance. Take a listen. The retreat for members of the House of Representatives was to update lawmakers on the current realities caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The gathering also afforded the lawmakers the opportunity to unveil an updated legislative agenda that had to be reviewed in line with the changes required to help the country through the COVID-19 era.
One of the rationale was to prepare and position the House of Representatives to deliver on the contract with Nigerians in the era of COVID-19 and, of course, beyond COVID. Also to provide a framework for coordination and interventions with the executive. Furthermore, to address other key governance challenges in the country, highlight internal reforms of the House that will aid the achievement of the agenda, provide effective reform coordination between the House and the Senate, and as a platform for multi-stakeholder engagement with public policy and dialogue.
With the pandemic, there were all kinds of things. People were not going to their farms. Things were not going through as it ought to be. So National Assembly must come up with laws that will guide us to be able to come up with food security and that agriculture will continue to prosper.
Secretary to the Government of the Federation and Chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Mr. Boss Mustafa, who was a special guest at the event, spoke on the role of the legislature at a time like this.
A lot would have to be done to re-engineer, to reconstruct our governance system, our health infrastructure, and that can only happen when the legislature is up to the task of making adequate regulations and rules and laws that would help us situate every aspect of our national being in the context of post-COVID-19. In my capacity as the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, I can attest to the fact that the mutual relationship that currently exists between the executive and the legislature has made governance more result-oriented and development-driven. This is made more manifest in the shared understanding that Nigerians deserve the best from their leaders at all times. The list of examples of mutual respect and understanding range from the respect for the principle of separation of powers, constant consultations, promptness in dealing with requests from the executive, through thorough and timely passage of budget, and a host of other positive steps taken by the legislature.
The Speaker, on his part, reminded his colleagues of the huge responsibilities before them.
This is the reality from which the Nigerian people are looking to us for lasting solutions. Are we able to rise to the challenges of our times? I believe that we are. This updated legislative agenda and the implementation plan, which we have tagged our contract with Nigerians, sets out the new priorities of this 9th House of Representatives and commits us to a plan of action over the next year and for the rest of our tenure. We have called this document a contract because that is what it is, a written account of what we owe the people and how we intend to meet our obligations within the shortest possible time. These documents represent our intention to be held accountable based on what we have freely committed to achieving, and which I am confident we will realize to the glory of God and the edification of our people. More importantly, this gathering is intended as a convenient space for us to have frank conversations about how we will go about achieving the objectives we have set out in our contract with Nigerians. This is an opportunity to empower ourselves with the confidence to dare and the skills to deliver.
After that, he hands a copy of the new legislative agenda to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. The retreat also provided a platform for the lawmakers to discuss possible legislative interventions for its new legislative agenda to save lives and the country's economy. Our second report takes a look at the interaction between the House of Representatives Committee on COVID-19 and the Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control (NCDC) after a tour of the reference laboratory in Abuja.
We'll do a quick talk.
The House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee on COVID-19, in company of the Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control (NCDC), takes a tour of the reference laboratory of the agency in Kaduna, Abuja. This is part of the oversight functions of the committee and an extension of the engagement with the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 in the past weeks.
Two 500 kVA and two 350 kVA.
The lab, which was set up in 2018, currently stores about 40,000 samples of COVID-19, positive and negative. At the beginning of COVID-19 in Nigeria, there were only 3 laboratories testing for the virus. The NCDC says there are now 60 laboratories across the country. At the end of the tour, both parties settled down for further interaction as the committee promises support from the House of Representatives.
The National Assembly has not rested on its oars. If you check the revised budget, COVID has been well taken care of. Most of the research laboratories in this country now will be properly funded. Your laboratories will be further expanded. And then all other issues that you will throw up through our discussion this afternoon, I assure you, we will meet with the Speaker and we ensure that those teething problems are met with.
For the Director General of the NCDC, more attention should be paid to the health sector beyond COVID-19.
Honorable members, we really have to elevate health security on the agenda a little bit in our national discourse, and that is what I really would like your committee to evolve. Yes, we have to deal with COVID-19 in the short term, but in the longer term, we really need to elevate the issue of health security a little bit higher in our national discussions and really look for stable, substantial, and sustainable funding for health security. The Basic Healthcare Provision Fund provides a little bit of a window into that. We must make sure we retain that small proportion that should come to health security and really ensure that we keep that. Because yes, we will be very grateful for the resources that we made available to the various parts. Most of it is not to NCDC, but we're happy with it. It will go to the centers that we need to collaborate with. But like you all know, the best time to prepare for a fire is not when your house is half burnt. The best time to prepare is before you're exposed to those hazards. So we really want you to keep this on the agenda, even post-COVID, so that we sustain the interest in health security.
The lawmakers are also worried that the NCDC spends about 3 million naira monthly on electricity.
It's an embarrassing one. How can we have this kind of national reference laboratory and power will be the problem here? I just want to say, DG, that we have found ourselves in this cauldron. And the way to go about it is that these discos, they are now having special services and tariffs for estates. Maybe you should talk to them. I know of estates in Lagos, they have power almost 24/7, but they pay through their nose, and people don't mind. So maybe you should go and sit down with them and see, because it will save costs in the long run. Because this you buy less of this. If NEPA can guarantee you AEDC, that's their name. If they can guarantee you adequate power and they raise your tariff, let's do it. Because if you look at it very well, it will still save cost.
The chairman has made it clear that it is possible for you to generate your own power here. And I think it's possible. So you can decide on this, because some of the equipment you showed us, they cannot do without power even for 5 or 2 or 3 minutes or 1 minute. And therefore, power is very, very key to your success in NCDC. Therefore, sir, tell the National Assembly what you want to do to finish with that problem at least once and for all, so that we don't, run into problems with samples or whatever you have kept that you need to use in future.
There are also concerns to improve testing across the country.
I don't think a reasonable person should blame any president or any leader. When this thing came, it came, and you have to wake up to the challenge, which I think in the Nigerian context is been done. I wanted to say that what happened in various states, the rumors or what has been happening in terms of testing, we've seen an improvement. Personally, from Gombe State, where I came from, nothing was going on there. But as time goes on, we see your involvement, we see NCDC coming, we see samples coming over and returning back. And so, even in my local government, a real village, we had people with COVID returning from various states. And the governor took it himself, using your guidelines, and help out.
I think there is a need, DG, to increase the number of collection centers. And I want to plead on behalf of the leadership of the House to bring a collection center to the National Assembly, so that all those members and senators and their families, if they need any test, they don't have to go and line up at the National Conference Center. I will link you up with the medical team there, so that if you want to use some of their staff, if you train them, you can work hand in hand with them, so that they can take the samples for you.
Come back to the gavel. Let's run through some bills and motions taken during plenary, which you may have missed, and also give you the position of civil society organizations on the borrowing plan of the federal government, which they disclosed during an interaction with journalists at the National Assembly. On the last day of plenary before adjourning for its annual recess, the House of Representatives considered a bill for the establishment of a federal medical center in Ogoja, Cross River State, and passed it through second reading.
That a bill for an act to establish a federal medical center in Abuja and for related matters be read the second time.
Ayes have it.
The attention of the House was also drawn to the killings in southern Kaduna.
Also note that in the last couple of months, most communities in southern Kaduna local government areas cannot go to farm, as the invaders have taken over most of the villages and communities. Mr. Speaker, the House also concerned that the attacks have continued despite a 24-hour curfew imposed in most of the local government areas of southern Kaduna for several weeks now. The House also is concerned by the unfortunate armed attacks
on Kukumdaji communities in Kaura local government area of Kaduna State on the night of Sunday 19th July 2020. Alarmed that no fewer than 19 persons were killed in the attack by gunmen who were heavily armed with sophisticated weapons. Call on the Inspector General of Police to urgently intervene and direct adequate deployment of security personnel in the affected communities for the protection of lives and property. Fish out the perpetrators and their sponsors and bring them to justice.
First and foremost,
days later, the Southern Kaduna Caucus of the House of Representatives addressed members of the House of Representatives press corps, where they expressed fears that there could be more attacks on the people of Southern Kaduna after the Salah celebration.
The military and the police, as we speak to you now, are making effort to make sure that these attacks are stopped. But the information reaching us, even before these attacks that started recently in Southern Kaduna, the one that took place in Kauru, in his constituency, the one that went into Zangon Katab, in his constituency, the one that took place in my constituency in Kaura, and then the one that took place in Jama, Sanga, that just happened about 5 days ago. We have had the information. These people, when they are coming, they even give us information, we are coming. We have told and informed the security agents. I have told my DPO to extend that information to his superiors, and he has taken that information seriously, as he has told me. But again, these attacks are still going on. So it is important to know that we also have information that they are going to attack massively and coordinately in Southern Kaduna after the Salah break. We are calling on our people to be vigilant.
Meanwhile, the Civil Society Advocacy Center, CISLAC, has asked the National Assembly to refrain from giving further approval to President Buhari to take more loans from either the local or foreign market. Speaking with journalists at the National Assembly on Tuesday, the executive director of CISLAC, Mr. Awa Rafsanjani, says he is worried about the rate at which the presidency sends requests for approval for borrowing, despite the huge amount of resources wasted by various ministries, departments and agencies. He maintains that he is strongly against further borrowing for the federal government without sufficient explanation about the management and utilization of recovered funds.
The National Assembly has responsibility to rescue this country. There is a systematic and institutional fraud that has been going on in this country, yet this government say that they are fighting corruption. This is the reason why we think, it is important that, government should actually focus its attention in recovering and blocking those leakages rather than continuously continue to borrow money. And this borrowing, it is invested in the development. At least it will create job opportunity. It will give healthy living for Nigerians. It will also be used to educate Nigerians. If you do these three things, at least Nigerians will appreciate that, yes, the loan is worth collecting. But you cannot continue to be collecting this loan, and you cannot account for what you have done with the loan. And this government in particular had collected several loans. No any reports on how it is being utilized. We have a Fiscal Responsibility Act that clearly tells you how and what you need to do, in terms of borrowing.
And speaking of loans, on Tuesday, the Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, met with the House of Representatives Committee on Treaties, Protocols and Agreements, where he appealed to federal lawmakers to halt the probe of the $500 million loan from the Chinese government. And according to the minister, the loan, which is meant for the completion of federal government's rail project, may be truncated by the Chinese government if it suspects that there is a disagreement between the executive and the legislature. The House of Representatives Committee on Treaties, Protocols and Agreements is investigating some of the loan agreements between Nigeria and China. The Minister of Transportation appeared before the committee for questioning on some of the federal government's loans for transportation projects. But just as the questions began to pour in, the minister expressed fears that the probe could negatively affect the loan agreement.
We're about to apply for loan. They will not grant that loan. Then you summon us back to the house and say, why are we constructing Lagos Kano? And we're not constructing Port Harcourt Maiduguri. The appeal I was making initially was, can we be allowed to get this loan? Then you can summon us. Not to start what you're doing, and the whole process will then be stopped.
Honourable Minister, we want you to go straight to his question. The preamble is not needed.
No, sir. No, sir.
No, I'm coming, sir. I'm coming. Whether Nigeria reactions to such an issues in terms of loan agreement, because I've also seen from the Ministry of Communications when Nigerians sign off some certain level of his sovereignty, if part of the clauses in that agreement is breached. I've also seen. So when National Assembly reacts in this manner to questions on level of agreement being entered by any ministry of this country and any other nations, we have every right to question that, because anything that is going to happen will happen to our generation unborn.
Now, Mr. Chairman, in responding to him, I have said to you that my fear is that at the end of the day, some sections of this country will suffer if they stop giving us loan. One more project, two more projects that will suffer. The first one is Lagos-Ibadan. Have we finished Lagos-Ibadan? They've not finished its crossing. We are asking for a loan to commence work from Ibadan to Kano. And the day they say, oh, the government is not supporting the loans people are taking, we are no longer giving you. That is the end of the project. I completely concede to you, Chairman, and to the House of your power to investigate, to oversight the executive. But in oversighting the executive, there's what is called national interest. Mr. Chairman, you don't suffer the pressure I suffer when I travel down east and I'm being told that we're not doing any railway in the east. Again, Mr. Chairman, the economy of this country can only be propelled by transportation. And the roads are not being completely fixed because there are too many. Therefore, the emphasis of the government is to fix the railways. So, no problems. I only sought approval that, look, we don't mind these investigations. Can we shift it to December, January, when we would have possibly gotten these loans? Once we get these loans, Chairman, turn me upside down and will answer you.
The minister is then asked to furnish the committee with more details of the loan agreement at a later date.
Let's have those details to appreciate what you want to take again. You understand? Because I want the progress of this country. We are partnering on this business. In going forward, those key areas, this agreement signed, those projects it has attended to, we want to know every money that has been released. Counterpart funding that has also been addressing such a project. The payment of this loan, how far have we gone? We also want to know the detail of how many Chinese are in those projects and their expertise. We want to know those details because our laws of our country must be defended and protected in terms of local content law.
The committee also resolved to summon the Ministers of Communications, Finance and the Director General of the Debt Management Office, DMO, to appear before it on the 17th of August. Well, let's see if any engagement will be held behind closed doors to persuade the National Assembly to possibly halt its probe so as not to scare the Chinese away. That's all the time we have on The Gavel this week. Thanks for watching. Do send feedback to thegavel@channelstv.com. I'm Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.